You're listening to Themes and Memes, a different kind of movie review. I'm your host, Aaron, and here with me is my co-host, Adam. How you doing, Adam?
Hey, Aaron. I'm good. Good to be back again.
Yeah. We have, of course, today's not a movie review. This is like the second show in a row that we haven't done that, but a special show, to be sure, a sad show. Got a sad... Well, I mean, what are we doing here today, Adam?
Well, we just thought that we would talk about somebody who passed away in the last couple of weeks, and that would be Alan Watt from cuttingthroughthematrix.com. Somebody who had a huge impact on both of our lives over the years. And he apparently died in his home in Canada on the 4th of March. There is no information on how it happened, and people close to him are refusing to comment. But yeah, it would seem that he's left us, and that I'll be honest, that the news hit me harder than I thought it would. In one way, I was surprised to learn to hear of this, but in another, I wasn't. And I'm sure we'll talk about why that is. But obviously, I can't necessarily speak for you, Aaron, in saying that he had a huge impact on your life, but I would guess that to be the case.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah. Definitely an impact on everything that I'm doing here online. You know, with this podcast, with the Age of Transitions. I mean, absolutely big influence. I used to listen to his show regularly. It's been a long time since I have, but I listened to it, and actually my wife bought his set of the 3 books for me for a gift one time for like a birthday or something. So I've read the books, and nice. I've sent him an email a while back, but that was a long time ago. I never kept up correspondence with him. I know that. I mean, do you want to talk about you in that regard? I don't know if you wanted to on here, but
yeah. I mean, all I'll say is that I was introduced to him in the first instance about 10, 11 years ago by a good friend of mine in Scotland, and took me about a while to come around to his his way of talking and the ideas that he was communicating, but I really, in the end, found that he had a huge, definitely the biggest impact on my view of the world in terms of the alternative media figures that we've been we've I guess grown up with in a way. You know, these figures of the last 10, 20 years in the alt media. He's had more impact on my life and my views than anybody. And it was strange because I hadn't listened to his Cutting Through the Matrix episodes, podcast. He calls them blurbs, for the past couple of years. And then, I mean, I had emailed him back and forth occasionally over the years, but it had been years since I'd heard from him and years since I'd listened to him. And then in December of 2019, he sent me a random email on Christmas Day, just reaching out and saying hello and saying, wherever you are, I hope you're doing well, and don't know if you're still listening, but keep in touch, that kind of thing. Just a friendly hello, and that was something of a surprise, I guess, but it was nice, and we kept in touch off and on over the last year, and the last I spoke to him via email was at the end of February. So in fact, I think exactly a week before his death. So. Yeah, we had a brief email correspondence, and without going into any detail, I will say that the last time I heard from him, he sounded a little off. I didn't think much of it at the time, but then I got the news shortly after that. He'd passed away at his home.
Yeah.
So that was sad.
It's definitely. I mean, it's a sad and mysterious situation, to be sure, but I mean, I kind of, it's not surprising that the mystery is there as to what happened. Alan was a very private person, which is definitely, I respect the way that he did that. He rarely would really even say anything about himself when he was doing his show, when he was doing any sort of material. It was like very rare that he would talk about his dogs, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, Hamish is doing good today," or like, I feel like that was the most often you would really hear much about him from him, you know, which I respected that, but he lived a very private life, to be sure.
Yeah, it would seem so. I mean, I would guess, and it seems that he did have some network of people around him who were fairly close, I guess. But yeah, he never really went into his personal life much. He would tell the odd story about this, that, or the next thing, but it was generally quite vague. You know, he wasn't into sort of dates or times or places or details. He would just sort of relay the odd experience, or maybe complain about something that he was challenging him in his day-to-day life. But again, never anything personal, too personal at least. And his whole approach, I think, was that he didn't want to be a celebrity. He didn't want to be about him. He was very anti the sort of cult of personality thing that was, which was definitely a big part of the conspiracy truth movement, shall we say?
Oh yeah.
You know, for a long time he was anti all of that. He was about the information, you know, and he stuck to his guns on that.
Yeah, I mean, he could have. He was a genuinely incredibly interesting person. So he could have like gone and on about personal stories, I'm sure. I mean, he was a professional studio musician, right? That's what he had done.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was a session guitarist. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, talk about interesting.
Yeah.
He must have just had so many good stories. Guaranteed.
Yeah, guaranteed. I mean, that guy traveled the world, you know, meeting all kinds of interesting people, all kinds of strange and wonderful experiences, and perhaps some not so wonderful as well. Yeah. But he lived a lot and he saw a lot. But at some point, anyway, I mean, again, we don't know. I don't know the exact details of how all this progressed, but I think in the late 90s, he started to pop up here and again on some of the Patriot radio stations.
Yes, I think he began as a caller, right? He would call into shows. Is that what happened?
I don't know, but I believe so, because it was these call-in interviews where you phone in and then you can either listen to it or you can speak to the hosts. And
that was back in shortwave radio days, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Again, this is before my time, so yeah.
I think that's how he started. He started as a caller in a shortwave radio, I think. And the stuff that he would say on there was so interesting that the host started bringing him on as a guest. It was a woman's show, but I can't remember the name of it.
That would be Jackie Patru. That's right.
Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the station. It was some classic kind of Patriot name. Something very, very predictable. Freedom Radio or something. American Freedom Radio.
Well, American Freedom Radio is a different one. Alan later would go on Republic Broadcasting Network, RBN. That was later on, though.
Oh, that was his own show, though, wasn't it?
That was a few years later. He started calling into Jackie Patru's show, as you're saying, and again on one of those networks. I'm sure it was like Eagle Flag Patriot Radio or something like that, you know, something along those lines. First Amendment Radio or something, I don't know. So it was something like that, and he would call in, and I think even to this day, I believe he had posted to cuttingthroughthematrix.com like old transcripts of his calls with her. I believe.
Yeah, I have some actually.
Yeah, I saved it at one point, and I'm pretty sure they're transcripts from those. And I think that's how things started for him, doing the radio thing.
I believe so. Yeah, a good friend of mine who got me into all this stuff, who introduced me to his work. I think he's got a huge collection. I think he's got just about everything. So yeah, I've listened to a few of those. They're good. They're really interesting, but. He found, I think he found after a period of time that he was getting popular on these sort of Christian Patriot, shortwave radio type broadcasts. But then then it didn't. Yeah, they sort of didn't work out because he was talking about bigger concepts that were going beyond the sort of exoteric understanding of religion and things like that.
Yeah, he was a bit of a misfit, to be sure, and certainly he wasn't coming from the Christian conservative point of view. That wasn't his own.
No, and I remember him saying, like, quite specifically at one point that he felt he'd sort of burned his bridges with those networks and those people because they were pressuring him to toe the line, essentially, to sort of to support the patriot sort of worldview, the Christian conservative, like it's
here's these talking points, please repeat them. Probably is what it was. Like, essentially that's probably what was going on, and he wouldn't do it, I assume, and so he just parted ways. That's probably what happened.
Yeah, and I think in his own words, they said that they hadn't been calling him back for a while. So, and I think the same went with some of the more new age shows. So if you recall, do you remember what Red Ice Radio was
correct
back in the day when they first started?
Correct. In the very beginning of Red Ice Radio, he was one of the regular guests.
Yeah, he did some amazing talks as well. He did some amazing stuff in the first, I would say, but 5 years of Red Ice. He was on a lot. There were some really good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but once again, I think he commented in the same, and I think it was the same blurb. He commented that he couldn't really, in all conscience, keep up with those guys either, because he wouldn't. They were into the New Age stuff, and they were into the UFOs and the aliens and the reptiles and the bloody, all the fantasy, feel good, exciting, the mystery stuff. And he was very much of the opinion that most of this was kind of like counterintelligence type stuff, disinformation that's designed to confuse people and just sort of keep them stupid and entertained and things like that. So
it's basically just entertainment and nothing more.
Yeah, exactly. Feel good stuff. It's it's mystical. It's fantastic. I mean, I used to love that stuff, but after a period of time, you realize that there's nothing of substance in any of it because it's all just speculation about paranormal things which can't be proven either way. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, captivating, but not so useful as something to hold on to change things for the better. So
yeah. Or even as a tool in your own personal growth, even, because the stuff, it takes all the focus away from you as an individual, what you can do for yourself, and makes it about God knows what, something else, something external, something mysterious, something fun, but ultimately useless. So
well, the thing
it was very against that.
The thing with Alan that I always found fascinating, and he had a true mystique about him, which I think is I know it's part of the appeal of him, is that he would do that, and he'd be like, he'd lay out like sort of just matter of fact sort of things, and fairly dry yet extremely disturbing topics like eugenics, for instance. He was big on that. He would do that, but he would also kind of like here and there he would mention like spiritual things and like the true reality is something more, but he would never like go into it deeply. So there was always that mystique, like, boy, I wonder what Alan really thinks about all that. That's kind of interesting that he would say that.
It is. I know exactly what you're talking about there, and I think my perception in that respect was, in regards to that, was that he held his own views, and whatever they were, he didn't want to. He felt that they could be too easily become a distraction. That once he starts talking about whatever his views are on metaphysics, for example, then he's just going to get hounded for it by all the people who want him to tell them what they already want to hear, basically, which was the problem.
Correct. Yes.
People who want him to confirm their own biases and beliefs, and he didn't want that at all. And his ultimate sort of. He kept coming back to the saying that the truth of yourself and who you really are is